Rain poured endlessly from the darkened sky, drumming against the cold asphalt like the heartbeat of despair itself. The world seemed to hold its breath at that lonely, remote gas station, hidden between miles of forest and the whisper of distant mountains. A silver luxury car gleamed under the flickering light of a single gas pump, its polished curves glistening with raindrops. Inside the car, silence reigned, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the muffled sob of a woman whose life was unraveling faster than the storm could wash away her tears. She was 8 months pregnant, her once radiant face now pale with exhaustion and disbelief. Her hands trembled against her swollen belly as if trying to comfort the little life within her, the only part of her world still innocent, still untouched by betrayal. Her husband, a man of immense wealth and even greater pride, stood outside the car, unmoved by the sight before him. The rain soaked through his tailored black suit, but he didn't seem to notice. His expression was one of cold finality, the kind that comes when a person has already detached his heart from the consequences of his own cruelty. He had been a man of ambition, ruthless, charming, and powerful. The world admired him, envied him, followed him. But in his pursuit of wealth, he had long forgotten the warmth of compassion and the meaning of promises once whispered under starlit skies. His success had turned him into a stranger, not only to others but to himself. The woman he once vowed to protect was now just another obstacle in his path to pleasure and freedom. He had decided this was the end, not with a fight, not with a word, but with abandonment. As she tried to comprehend his actions, confusion and pain warred inside her. The rain blurred her vision, or perhaps it was the tears that refused to stop falling. She had loved him beyond reason, beyond herself, believing that beneath his arrogance there existed a man who could still feel, who could still love. But standing there, drenched and trembling, she realized the man she once adored no longer existed. In his place stood someone who valued pride more than love, image more than humanity. When he turned his back and walked toward the car, her breath caught, a soundless plea formed in her throat, but she couldn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence between them said everything words never could. The car engine roared to life, shattering the fragile stillness. The headlights cut through the rain like knives, blinding her for a moment before the car sped away into the distance. The echo of the tires against wet asphalt faded slowly, leaving her alone, utterly, devastatingly alone. Her white dress clung to her body, soaked through, as she knelt on the cold ground. The gas station lights flickered above her, as though mocking her pain. The storm raged harder, lightning streaking across the sky as if nature itself wept for her. She pressed her hand to her belly, whispering silent promises to the child within her, promises of strength, survival, and a love that would never abandon. Hours passed before a kind stranger stopped at the station, drawn by the sight of a woman collapsed beside the pumps. They took her to safety, and from that moment, her new life began, one forged from the ashes of heartbreak and humiliation. She worked tirelessly, refusing to let despair consume her. The days were long, the nights cruel, but she carried within her a reason to fight, her unborn child, her last connection to hope. When her son was born, she named him Ethan, meaning strong, because that was what she had learned to become. Every sleepless night, every tear shed in the dark, every sacrifice became part of her transformation. The woman once abandoned in the rain began to rebuild herself, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Years later, the same man who had left her in that storm sat in a luxurious resort, surrounded by people who laughed at his jokes and praised his success. Yet, behind his hollow smile, something gnawed at him, a void he couldn't fill with money or admiration. He had everything he thought he wanted, yet peace eluded him. In quiet moments, when the world's noise faded, he would see flashes of that night, her face in the rain, her hand reaching out, her silence louder than any scream. The image haunted him, a reminder of what he had destroyed in his arrogance. Regret crept into his heart like a shadow, growing darker with each passing year. Meanwhile, the woman he left behind was no longer broken. She had built a small life with love and resilience. Through struggle, she found meaning. Through pain, she found purpose. Her son grew up knowing kindness and strength, never the bitterness of his mother's past. She never spoke of his father's cruelty, choosing instead to teach her child forgiveness, not for the sake of the men who left, but for their own peace. Life rewarded her perseverance in quiet ways, a community that cared, a stable home, the laughter of her child echoing in the mornings. She became a symbol of endurance, proof that even in the darkest storm, one can find light within themselves. Years later, fate, in its mysterious design, brought them together again. He saw her by chance, not as the fragile woman he once abandoned, but as a radiant figure of grace and strength. She walked with confidence, her son by her side, both of them smiling, untouched by his absence. For the first time, he realized the true measure of wealth was not in what one owns, but in what one gives: love, loyalty, compassion. Watching them, he felt a pain deeper than guilt, the pain of understanding too late what he had lost. He wanted to approach, to speak, to apologize, but words were useless now. She had moved on, her silence now filled with peace instead of pain. Without a word, she walked past him, not out of hatred, but out of the quiet dignity of someone who had already forgiven. As he watched her disappear into the crowd, a strange calm washed over him. He finally understood that leaving her had cost him more than money ever could, it had cost him his soul. He returned to his resort, surrounded again by empty luxury, but this time, every sound, every face, every echo reminded him of the moment he chose pride over love. He had once been admired by the world, but he now knew admiration without heart was meaningless. In contrast, she, the woman he had left behind, had found a life filled with genuine joy, a life born from pain but transformed by grace. Her journey became a quiet inspiration to many who heard her story. She never sought revenge, never boasted of her survival. Instead, she used her experience to help others, women abandoned, hearts broken, dreams shattered. Through her compassion, she gave strength to those who thought they had none. Her message was simple yet powerful: the storm that breaks you can also rebuild you. Her son grew up watching her kindness and resilience, and he carried her values into the world, a living testament to her strength. In the end, the story was never about the men who left, but about the woman who rose. She had learned that sometimes being left behind is not a curse, but a chance to find yourself again. Pain had been her teacher, love her redemption. And as she stood one evening, years later, watching the rain fall outside her window, she smiled, not because she had forgotten that terrible night, but because she had survived it. The rain no longer symbolized sorrow, but cleansing. It was the same rain that once witnessed her heartbreak, now washing away the remnants of her past. Life had come full circle, and she had emerged victorious, not in wealth, but in spirit. This story is a reminder that no betrayal, no abandonment, no heartbreak can destroy the power of a determined soul. Love, when lost, can be found again, not in another person, but within yourself. For those who feel broken, remember, your strength begins where your pain once lived. Never let despair define you, let it refine you. Because sometimes, the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. And if this story touched your heart, remember, every storm has a purpose, every scar a story, and every fall a chance to rise again. Subscribe now for more powerful, life-changing stories that remind you, no matter how dark the night, the dawn always comes.